And I'd like to introduce your moderator for this session. Please welcome Suzanne Rainey, SVP of Content Acquisitions, OWNZONES Media Network. She's going to lead this discussion.
It's great to be here today. OWNZONES Media Networks is a state-of-the-art technology platform that launches OTT streaming, video-on-demand channels, and native apps. And we couple that with distribution, programming, marketing, and enterprise. Because you can build it, but they're not necessarily going to come, are they? So I'm really happy to be here today in San Francisco to talk about OTT because it is the gold rush capital, and it really is the wild, wild west for the OTT world. And we're going to focus our discussion today around the several hundred channels that have been launched in the last few years and talk about how to make them a successful service. And we have a fantastic and expert panel here today to talk about this, and we will start by letting them introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about their company and their role in it. Dallas.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Dallas Middaugh. I am the man or woman from Crunchyroll that was mentioned earlier. Just a quick show of hands, how many people are familiar with Crunchyroll? Okay, so about half. So briefly, we, of course, we're an OTT service. We are work in a very specific vertical niche, and that is Japanese animation. We currently have about 20 million registered users using our ad-supported service. We have 750,000 paid subscribers at present. And anime is huge in Japan, and there's this incredible funnel of it coming to the West. So we actually are typically putting up anywhere from 40 to 50 entirely new shows every 3 months on the service. Oh, and I oversee the brand and community department, which means we're responsible for the Crunchyroll brand, the individual IP, the content partner management, and everything we do around community, social events, things like that.
Hi, I'm Stefan Van Engen, and I'm the SVP of Content Programming for Xumo. Xumo is an OTT platform. We work directly with the smart TV manufacturers to bring streaming channels to you. There's no boxes, no offense Roku, there's no extra cords. We come sort of pre-installed with our television partners, and I oversee our content partnerships, bringing new channels on board. We're very much a launch channel brands versus license individual shows and movies. So we're really working with our channel partners to help extend and market their brands and help them better program their channels for OTT.
Hi, I'm Chris Ruddy. I'm CEO of Newsmax Media, which is based in Boca Raton, Florida. We started as, in 1998, I founded a company that was focused as an online news service. It has grown. We are one of the top internet news service companies in the country. ComScore says we reach about 50 million people through our sites, our partner sites, and have built a very, very robust infrastructure, cross-platform. People talk about integrating cross-platform. We actually did it on many levels. And one of those areas is television. About 5 years ago, we launched a video-on-demand program where people could get news with videos and interviews with famous newsmakers. That worked really well. 3 years ago, we launched a digital stream, partly during the day for 3 or 4 hours. That we saw had a lot of potential. And then about 2 years ago, we launched both an OTT and cable channel. So we're really a hybrid, and which gives us certain challenges, but it also gives us really interesting insight into what's working on OTT, what's working on cable, linear cable, what the synergies are, what the things that work against each other are. And it's been a good couple of years. We're now 24/7 on about 35 million cable homes, DirecTV, Verizon Fios, 40 other cable operators. We do 5 hours of live news programming every day, run a lot of documentaries and special programs outside of that. And then our OTT channels now on about 30 different major apps and smart TVs, and we're seeing a lot of exciting growth in that area.
Hi, my name's Ted Malone. I'm responsible for product planning and product strategy for Ericsson TV and Media. I feel like a little bit of the odd man out here in that I'm the only vendor represented on this panel. And I would guess that probably half of you in the room probably still think that Ericsson makes cell phones, because it seems like I talk to people and they're like, Ericsson, don't you make cell phones? But actually, we're the largest supplier of software for digital compression, distribution, and consumption for pay TV. So we power AT&T Uverse and 52 other pay TV systems. We also, over the last few years, have been expanding and added a lot of functionality for consuming pay TV over the top and on managed devices. So kind of over unmanaged networks and on mobile screens, et cetera. We sell both software as well as managed services. So a lot of these exciting experiences we're talking about, you don't just take your content and put it in a Dropbox folder and wait for people to download it. You need to actually distribute it, and my guess is you're going to probably want to monetize it somehow. And so that's where we come in. We help with everything from the software creation, system integration, operation. We even have turnkey platforms that you just add content and add your branding and start charging money for your content. So we're kind of a platform provider in that regard. We're the largest supplier of compression equipment to Comcast for Xfinity. And we have everything from content creation software all the way through mobile apps and set-top box apps. So very much an end-to-end supplier. We also power an OTT service for a company in Canada, Bell Canada, who's one of the leading providers of over-the-top. They stream 300 channels of live TV, and all of it is buffered for 7 days. So you have 300 channels of live, all powered through our software, both in-home and out-of-home, all cached for 7 days. And so you can back up through all that. So that's a fairly significant cloud DVR system that powers that, plus the entire OTT streaming system. We don't brand anything. We just provide products and services to help people realize their dreams.
Thank you. So we're talking about successful OTT services here, and I thought it'd be really interesting to start with Dallas telling us how Crunchyroll began and grew into a service with 750,000 subscribers.
Yes, I wanted to speak today about my vast knowledge of the beginnings of Crunchyroll since I started there a year ago, but it actually is very exciting, and since I myself came from Japanese entertainment licensing, I did know about Crunchyroll. So the company was founded in 2006, 10 years ago. And the first couple of years, what they did was to aggregate video that was supplied by fans. A decade ago, the demand for anime was there. It was very strong, but there weren't a lot of great delivery mechanisms. The only thing we really had in this country was DVD, which was a long lead time. So what was happening 10 years ago was that in Japan, the show would run on TV, fans would get a hold of it, and they would put their own subtitles onto it, and they would upload it to the internet. And these things started showing up on YouTube and torrenting and other places. So what Kungao, the founder of the company, and our GM, and a couple of other guys from Berkeley who aren't with the company anymore, did was they created a service to aggregate these feeds. Of course, none of these feeds were actually legal, so they were in some tricky areas there. So a couple of years in, they decided to do something that would be a big game changer for Crunchyroll, of course, which was to go out and approach Japan about licensing the material officially. Today, we're certainly the largest dedicated streaming service for anime. We are a top 10 service among OTT services in North America, and we are available throughout the world. I should keep my notes in front of me because I know there was more I was going to go over, but I think I hit the highlights there.
Okay, well, we're going to dive into it a little bit more. And Ted, why don't you start? I'd like to hear about what you think the 3 most essential things are for a successful OTT launch, and then let's just hear from each of you.
Great. Okay. So I think it's a great question. We've worked with a lot of people to put their content online, and I think in order to have a successful OTT service, the first thing you obviously need is content, and whether it's niche content like anime or whether it's more broad content, I think consumers are only going to be interested if you're offering the content they want. I think on the other end of the spectrum, the other thing that we've found is it's critical that you make your content available on all the devices that consumers want. And I would recommend that you not just look at the market share of iOS and Android and think, that's 80%, that's good enough. I think really in order to have a good strategy that reaches all consumers, you need to think about them and reaching them on all their devices, even if you feel like the share is small. And there are some ways to do that through some things like HTML5 and JavaScript and some sort of common user experience that might give you kind of a good enough way to get them your content on those different devices. But I would say don't rule anybody out, especially if you're really concerned about reach. And then I think probably the third ingredient of an OTT service is probably going to be the quality of the experience, making sure that you've got an experience that meets the needs of consumers, and you're not thinking of it as a technology problem, but you're really thinking of it as a user experience problem and helping them. We heard people talking about time to content, et cetera. I think every consumer behaves differently, so I think understanding your target consumers and what they want is really critically important. So think about the user experience, not the tech.
Well, I think Ted, really important, foundational is content, because you need to build that better mousetrap, so to speak, and have people not only like it, they'll come back, they'll refer friends. So if you get them, it's not easy to get people to open an app and watch something. So if you get them and you don't hook them the first time, you may never hook them again or for a long, long time. The second thing is, I think, marketing, and that's really key, because if you have that good product, and I know a lot of good products, but nobody knows about them, so you really need that marketing. Newsmax is lucky because we reach those 50 million Americans monthly, so we're able to alert people. For example, we've gotten about 700,000 people to download our app. You can get the Newsmax app, by the way, on any iPhone or Android in the country, and it's free. And you can watch free, which a lot of these channels are behind paywalls. So that's been an advantage for us.
That's good marketing there.
Yes. Send me a bill. And so the marketing experience. The other thing is, I think, fragmented. There's so much fragmentation in the OTT world. Really try to focus on who you think your app is going to work for best. So, Roku's obviously one of the big players. Amazon is growing really fast. YouTube, we have seen, make sure your live stream is working on YouTube, because it's essentially become the default app for anyone looking for a video experience that they recently heard of.
And Xumo.
And Xumo, which is a new growing brand.
There you go. I think I'm going to be fairly repetitive about the 3 sort of essentials to launching OTT, but I'll sort of put my own spin on it. One would be sort of programming strategy, right? A lot of people, I see a lot of media partners and channel partners who have sort of a ubiquitous distribution strategy, and they kind of pump it out to whatever platform will take it and however it will take it, and they don't give a lot of thought to where or how it's appearing and to how it's being programmed. And I think in order to drive users, you have to think about the type of platform that you're distributing to and what works best for the users of that platform. At Xumo, we're trying to pass that data back to our partners so that they can make smarter decisions about the programming, about what's working for them and what's working on their channel. We're not the sort of black box, as it was referred to, of Netflix. We're passing that data back so that you can have a smarter programming strategy. Marketing is a huge essential. There's just too much out there and too many places to get it. Without help from the platforms, you're going to be lost. So as a channel partner or a content provider or somebody launching an OTT service, you really need to work with the platforms to figure out how you can surface your channel and your material. And again, at Xumo, we have on-platform and off-platform marketing. We're working really closely with our partners to figure out the best way to reach audiences and to alert them when there's new premieres or a new channel even. And then third, I think at the end, it really does come down to the content. Content, I know everybody says content is king, but we see that all the time. If a user likes what they're seeing, they're going to come back and look for more of it. And which ties into the first point about programming strategy. We're seeing return users come back within the first week, and it's about 46%. And they're looking for new content. And if they don't see it, they don't come back for another 3 weeks to check it out. So you need to constantly be thinking about that refresh rate.
So I think rather than try to give my three, because I think they've given great answers, I want to go deep on one that's really, really important for Crunchyroll, and that's that sense of community. Crunchyroll has the advantage of working with content that's coming at this regular rate from Japan that fans are actually seeking out. We're just making it easier for them to get it. So what our opportunity becomes then is how do we deepen that relationship with those fans? And this is absolutely essential, and it's a key part to Crunchyroll's success. Our tagline is everything anime, because when you watch anime, it's a lot of fun, it's great. There are all these things around it that you can only offer when you have a service that, again, that goes deep, that's very, very focused on a specific vertical. In our case, this is very robust social media written by superfans to the fans, so it has an authenticity to it that you just can't fake. It is attending conventions around the country and talking to anime fans. I mean, we actually go to about 20 this year, but we send materials to support over 200 of these shows throughout the U.S., all as a way to just engage fans. Our Loot Crate partnership came up in the previous panel discussion. That's another one. There's all this great merchandise in Japan and in the U.S. As our fans get more and more involved with the content, they actually are looking for more ways to get physically involved with the content. And I realize I'm going on, and I could go on at length, and I'm sorry. But I did want to point one thing out. As we all sit here and talk about OTT, and to be clear, I stream everything at this point myself. In the DVD space, as it shrinks, the one category that's growing is actually anime, because the collectors, the fans, they love the shows, but they want that pride of ownership as well. So we try to find as many ways as we can to engage with them in that way.
Great. So content, user experience, technology, and marketing. It's so simple. So Stefan, would you tell us more about your programming model and how you see it developing?
Yep. So we, for a content provider, we just take content feeds. So there's no app development. There's not a whole lot of heavy lifting. We do all the normalization and optimization for the different smart TVs that we distribute to, and we're currently in about 60% of the U.S. smart TV market, and that distribution will continue to grow throughout this year. And so for content partners who are streaming or providing VOD assets, it's really just a content feed. And we put those together in partnership with the content providers to provide sort of that lean back experience. It's different than a mobile social platform where people are looking for a catchy headline and something to share first and have the social cachet of sending it to 10 friends before their 10 friends send it to them. Ours is really sort of putting a lot of these digital video first channels and publishers into the living room in a lean back experience. And we really launched in January, and we're seeing sort of engagement on some of our channels up to 30 minutes per user per session already. and these are short form assets. So people are blowing through sort of 10 to 20 videos at a sitting, which also goes back to my previous point about content refresh.
Great. Chris, how do you attract and retain viewers to your OTT platform?
Attracting sort of easy, retaining is a little more difficult, but we are seeing that that's working. That 46% number you have is fantastic of the first return percentage. One of the things that we found is very helpful is when you get people to download an app, if you have your own app, a lot of people accept notifications. And so even if they don't look at you, we have the benefit of being available online on display, or folks going to their cable TV channels like DirecTV. So we can notify them in a very easy way that some special programming, for instance, we've done a lot of election programming, and that's been very helpful in building audience. We also like to do tentpole events where we again, an election night event is something where we're going to have a famous person on to comment about the news. Alan Dershowitz is coming on tonight to talk about Hillary Clinton in the primary, or Sarah Palin's coming on tonight to talk about the Republican primary and Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. So that just draws a lot of people, and we saw traffic numbers go way up when we did those type of things. And then we're great believers at Newsmax in email lists. So if you can get, when you get registered users for things, get their emails, because emails are still the social security number of the internet. I have over 6 million opt-in emails across all my platforms. And so it's a very powerful way for us to drive audience to our various media outlets, including our OTT channel.
Fantastic. And Ted, how are your clients addressing all the availability of all these OTT services?
I think that's a good question. I know that our largest customer base are still kind of the traditional pay TV providers, and I think there was a period of time where they saw OTT services as a threat, and they felt like if you signed up for Netflix, that you were going to cut the cord, or you're going to spend less money on VOD or what have you. And I think most operators have now come around to realizing that a lot of these OTT services are just a different type of channel, and a lot of these operators also provide the broadband service that is obviously required in order to consume anything over the top. So I think we're seeing a lot more of cooperation, where we're doing things like integrating metadata to provide unified search, and then providing deep linking, so that from the pay TV experience you can discover programs that are available over the top and actually jump right into those experiences. So I think we're seeing a real change that it's not an either or, that there's a lot of opportunity to bring these OTT channels to traditional pay TV providers. And whether you choose to pay $200 a month for broadband and TV or not, and whether you feel like those old school pay TV operators are evil, the reality is they still control a lot of eyeballs, and there's a lot of viewers who like watching live TV. And I think there's an opportunity to partner and to extend your reach versus just seeing them as old school competition.
And on these new OTT platforms that you're developing, what kind of features are you creating, and what features are mandatory? Do you consider to be mandatory?
So I think initially most of the OTT services that we built were as an adjunct to pay TV service. So you already had pay TV, and the operator wants to make sure that they can extend their experience onto mobile devices versus risk losing you to another service provider. So I think in that case we built a lot of features that were either companion features to your home TV experience, or were specifically tied to the experience that you get at home. So for instance, we would offer pause and resume across multiple devices. So you watch a part of a movie at home, and now you're on the road. Well, when you pick up your mobile phone and go to your Uverse experience, we'll show you the last show you were watching and start right from where you left off. So those kinds of features that go back and forth between pay TV and OTT, those were important. I think now that for instance, we power Showtime's over-the-top service right now, and in that case, it's purely an over-the-top service. There's no connection really into the pay TV experience they provide. And so now we've started to offer a lot of more the kinds of features you would expect from a mobile app. So connection to social. I share with Twitter that I just saw this show and I loved it, and those kinds of things are more what a consumer on a mobile device might expect versus what somebody who sees this as an extension of their pay TV service might offer.
Fantastic. And Dallas, you use a lot of social media, and you told me you use Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube quite a bit. I'd like to hear about what you're doing there and what's working.
Absolutely. So our audience is an interesting mix. It's predominantly millennials, and it tends to be more male than female. But that's our paid subscribers. When it comes to our free service, it tends to skew a little more, the demographic gets a little more to 50-50 and a little bit younger. All of that is just to say that, of course, our audience is using social media very, very heavily. So engagement with that audience through social media is really essential. And this is where the whole by fans, for fans ethos, that authenticity comes into play for us. So on Facebook, we've learned that we can post 6 times a day. If we post any more than 6 times a day, the viewership of those posts starts to go down. Our reach there is pretty good. We have 1.4 million likes on Facebook. And in any given week between Facebook and Twitter and our other platforms, we're looking at a reach of about 20 million with an engagement to about 800,000 people, or at least 800,000 shares or retweets or reposts. That's what's so important to us. In some ways, what we look to grow even more than the reach is actually that engagement. Are we putting up content that gets people talking, gets people referring to the shows that they're really interested in, or gets them interested in something new? Now, YouTube is actually, we're relatively new to YouTube, which is a little crazy when you consider we're a 10-year-old streaming service. But the fact of the matter is, we have only just recently started to develop our own shows around anime, the sort of thing that places like Nerdist and Geek and Sundry have been doing for a long time. It's starting out really well for us. We just started a couple of months ago. Check out my own show, Anime Uncovered, on YouTube. And it's really been a great opportunity for us to interact with and engage the fans. I mean, at the end of the day, we talked earlier, there was a question about how do you attract and retain fans. For us, attracting fans and subscribers is pretty straightforward. We just get the best content we can out of Japan. The next question then becomes how do we retain them, and social media and engagement is an essential part of that.
Fantastic. And Chris, how are you using social media?
Well, we use it several ways. One is to attract new viewers to Newsmax TV. We'll alert them before some story, one of those tentpole events I talked about before. And then when a story breaks on Newsmax TV, we will do social media and ask people to share it. So, again, Newsmax came into this with a pretty robust social media on Facebook and Twitter because of our online media company before we started the channel. And then on the channel, we're constantly directing people to make comments, to see various things on our Facebook page, to sign up for Facebook or social, for Twitter. Our demographic tends to be older, 45 plus, so they're a little less into Instagram and Twitter and more into Facebook.
And Stefan?
So we use our own social media channels to help promote our partners. And that's a growing presence, although we're young and we've been focused on the actual platform. We are growing our own social presence to help support partners, premieres, new channel launches, and just overall awareness. I think the flip side of that is partnering with our channels to utilize their social media to promote their own content on our platform. So, for example, we've done some sponsorships of specific channels where they'll utilize their audience and move their audience and make their audience aware that the content can be found on Xumo. And I think it's really important that there's this sort of cross-promotional aspect, and that that the channels themselves are feeling engaged with the platform and pushing where they're distributed and where their fans could find them. There's just this general notion that you should be out everywhere and everything, and I think that that's fine, but the channels need to also sort of tell people where everything is.
Suzanne, I might just mention there's pitfalls here. You know, I think Facebook is a bit of an illusion. You could have 1 million followers on Facebook and you send out an announcement and you realize the statistics show only about 5 to 7% of those people, of your own followers, will ever see that in their feed. So meanwhile, you've been building up this huge following that you can't really tap into. I know a lot of celebrities who've been very upset that built up Facebook that way. So the message is, to the degree you can get people to register, get their emails, etc., I think the social media is a great branding way to brand and get your brand known. But then if you can directly tap into your subscribers through other means, even advertising or whatever, get them to be a free registered user first, give them maybe even a Newsmax is built up. We have a subscriber base of about 700,000 paid for subscribers to various newsletters we sell. And we give people free trials, and we get their emails. And that's a great way to hook them first, and then you go back to close on the deal. And I think that same approach can be used for OTT paid models.
I like that, and pitfalls is a good avenue to pursue. What is an example of maybe something that someone should avoid, that in your experience as you've been launching and developing your services?
Well, this one is not going to be helpful advice, but if it were 10 years ago and you were starting your own service before there were any streaming services, maybe you shouldn't build it yourself. We ended up building platforms that if we had started 3-4 years later, there would have been companies out there that were already creating these things. And so we ended up having to transition over to more up-to-date platforms. But today, I would say, well, look, at the end of the day, the advice that I'm going to give is not going to apply to everybody. I'm very content focused. So my chief priority is always going to be the content. Do you have something that is going to get attention or that there is demand for? The technology side of it, on the other hand, absolutely essential, but I'm always of a mindset that go get the experts for that. So that's the best advice that I can give.
And I'm also on the content side, and I completely agree. We see examples all the time where channels launch and they have sort of a set it and forget it mentality, and they're just pumping out the material and not paying attention to the data that we're giving them back or to the suggestions that we're making back in terms of what works for the Xumo platform. And the other side of that is sort of having content that's your sort of distributed, syndicated content for OTT that may be separate than your core O&O product, and all of a sudden it's a little watered down. And we have big brands and big channel partners, and people go to those channels and they're disappointed that it doesn't match the brand promise that they've seen someplace else. And so content, again, is really important to focus on as you're distributing.
And Ted, I'm sure you agreed with Dallas's comment, but do you have anything else to add?
Well, yeah, I did agree with Dallas. I think, you know, today's technical innovation is tomorrow's commodity, so kind of be careful where, you know, not to build things that you can get. I think with the Netflix OSS and some other things that are out there, if you really are somebody who wants to build it yourself, then still there's plenty of open source and shared ways to do that where you're not having to fund it and do it all yourself. I think, you know, another pitfall, if you're still on that topic, might be a really unclear monetization strategy. I think there's a lot of different ways to monetize content, whether it's transactional, subscription, ad sponsored, etc. And I think it's really important to understand what you think is going to resonate with your audience, what is going to help with, you know, we've heard a lot about marketing and recommendation, the whole net promoter score concept. I think every subscriber is valuable, every viewer is valuable, and I think having a service that is sticky and that people are going to want to tell their friends about and bring other people into is pretty critical. And you don't want to screw that up with an uncertain or a and a not well thought out monetization strategy.
That's true, and Crunchyroll is a great example of that. So you guys have been able to build this huge subscriber base, and your responsibilities include community as well as branding. And I'd like to hear a little bit about what you're doing to strengthen your already amazing brand.
Great. But before I answer that, I want to come back and put a PS on my answer to the last question, because I realized as I trailed off there saying go work with other people, I completely ignored the efforts of people within my company. Our parent company is Elation, and you may or may not have seen yesterday that we announced our own new platform, Verve, which is actually going to have a number of channels, of which Crunchyroll is going to be the anchor. So I'm saying this because I know we're streaming, and if the engineers in the office heard me saying go work with other people, they would justifiably kill me when I got back. Branding, and I'll just keep this part short. Again, for us, it's about going deep. So I mentioned all of the things we do to extend the brand. A phrase we use a lot is that we try to help people live the anime lifestyle, because that is a real thing. And there's another component to it too, oddly enough for us, which is actually at retail. Loot Crate, we mentioned before, has been a great way to deepen that relationship with our user. We have products at Hot Topic, Crunchyroll branded shirts. And we're even just about to launch a partnership with Barnes & Noble around promoting books around our content as well.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go to the Q&A. Yes. And I think there's a microphone.
Questions for Dallas. So you touched on a little bit your monetization strategy. Can you talk about a little bit how the recent partnerships with, and how they break out? I'm trying to get my head around it with the Chernin Group, Elation, AT&T, and how they help drive your anime properties.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of 2-3 years ago, the Chernin Group acquired a majority interest in Crunchyroll, and it was from that basis that Elation was formed. Under Elation now, there is Crunchyroll. There's another service we have called Creative Bug that's more oriented towards crafts and art, and then Verve again, which I just mentioned. My focus, of course, is on Crunchyroll. So our monetization strategy is really, really simple, of course, and it's get people converted from using the free service to using the paid subscription. When a subscriber starts to pay, they get three things. There are perks, discounts at like Barnes & Noble, for example, for buying books. But there are also things you drop the ads, it goes ad-free. And we put our free shows on a 1-week delay. One of the advantages, we use the term simulcast, one of the advantages with Crunchyroll is that we have anime up within an hour of its broadcast in Japan. You can really only take full advantage of that if you are a paying member. So that's at the core of what we do.
I also had a question for Dallas regarding the size of the social media team compared to the size of Crunchyroll. I mean, how many employees are at Crunchyroll? How many people are dedicated to posting on Facebook, creating content for Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram? Not LinkedIn, but
You know, it's interesting. I don't have a specific answer for that, but I will explain why. Although what I work on is Crunchyroll, and we have, I don't know, probably about 200 people in the office at this point, we're all kind of touching a little bit of everything. So while I have people specifically devoted to social, again, we're very much a community of fans doing this ourselves. So I'm a good example of that. We do a lot of stuff on YouTube. I stepped up because I liked one show, and now I do a weekly show on YouTube. It's not the core of my job. So we have a lot of people working on a lot of different things and bringing that expertise wherever we think it's best suited.
Any other questions? Okay, I have one more question for the panel. What is your most important initiative for the next 12 months that you'd like to share with us?
I've gone on about the everything anime lifestyle at length. So I would say our other most important initiative is in our effort to get as many shows as possible, we've moved to a place where we are now joining the investment committees in Japan that actually create the shows. So we announced a partnership a few months back with Sumitomo Bank in Japan to create a fund to fund more anime. because we view ourselves in many ways as kind of the ambassadors of anime to the world. That's probably our biggest goal in the next 12 months, is to keep spreading the word.
Original production.
And original productions, yes, maybe.
For Xumo, we're launching our mobile app this week. Actually, it'll be starting with iOS, and so that's the immediate next focus. Sort of TV on the go to support the lean back experience, and but over the next 12 months, we'll be evolving from ad supported, where we're starting, to transactional and subscription, and carrying things like Crunchyroll, right?
I'm in.
Our big area is live news programming. We have an election coming up in 4 months. Everybody's really focused, hyper-focused on that. But even after that, whoever wins is going to be just a lot of interest. We want to move from 5 to as many as 12 hours of live news programming, so people can feel they come to us regularly and often during the day, get latest news and information, and adding some interactive features, making our channel more interactive with our users, and that's two main focuses.
I'd say our biggest strategic initiative is a suite of products we call Media First. It starts with Media First compression through Media First TV platforms and Media First distribution, and it's a set of products that are based on some key principles around it all being cloud tech. So it takes advantage of cloud things like auto scaling, et cetera. It's operated in a DevOps fashion so that it brings agility to customers and offers features like VOD, catch-up TV, live, et cetera. And it works either over a managed or an unmanaged network. And then it also has built-in analytics so that you can real-time analytics, so you can understand what consumers are doing, identify who the individuals are that are watching, target content, target advertising, et cetera. So I would say that Media First suite of products is probably our biggest initiative.
Fantastic. And then mentioning analytics, and someone mentioned analysis paralysis earlier. I'd like if you could give us an example of a real-world use of data in your company. And Chris?
Well, in terms of actual numbers or how we interpret the data?
How do you interpret it?
Well, we look at the statistics. You know, the OTT statistic data, at least from what we're seeing, is not as comprehensive. When we subscribe to RenTrack, for instance, on our linear cable channel, we get a lot of granular data, and then it varies on what we get from the various OTT providers themselves, and then ComScore's doing some tracking now, but it's sort of very sketchy. So, like, for instance, we look at the data, and when we see more viewership, we're putting more efforts into promoting those channels. I mentioned YouTube earlier. I mentioned it's effectively, we see a lot of growth in YouTube live streaming. I don't know if you saw the recent interview with the CEO of YouTube about a week ago in the Wall Street Journal, and she said that they don't see other OTT devices as being their threat, that they see traditional television and cable as their main competitor. And with the growth of the live channel that we've seen on YouTube, I can see why they're thinking that. And we were thinking, why is everybody going to YouTube to watch Newsmax TV? And it's probably a very easy app for people to find on their various devices.
All right. That is our panel. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.